Oh, dude, I just headshot him.
What's up guys, my name is Kale, and today on Linking Games, we're going to be taking a look at this.
What?
This is the Worker Seagull. Despite this blaster being one of my favorite blasters to come out in the past year, it's got some glaring issues that no one is talking about. We're going to cut through the BS, and I'm going to tell you everything you know to decide whether this blaster is for you or not.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Let's get into it. Now, by the time this video is dropping, there are already a ton of reviews on this blaster, but I wanted to give my perspective as someone who travels around the country playing in professional Nerf tournaments and see if I'm any more harsh on this blaster than some of the other reviews have been. And I can pretty much guarantee that I've put more hours into this blaster than any other reviewer on the platform. So I guess you could consider this a long-term review. Side note, today is a great day. Got the new Ghost drip, the new Ghost EDC exclusive flavor, and The Story So Far just dropped their new album. I'm just vibing. But without further ado, let's talk about what comes in the box. This is an incredibly small box. Like, this whole blaster fits in this small box. What you'll notice is that I have the orange one, or the Out of Darts exclusive edition, and yet the box still shows a purple one. Doesn't matter what color you get, the box will always show a purple one. I do like the design on the box, and it's very similar to the Worker Harrier and the Worker Swift and the Worker Nightingale. Basically, it's just been consistent branding. I'm going to mention something about the picture here in relation to the front iron sight, but we'll get into that in a second. Now, this is the blaster fully assembled. It comes with a brand new curved Worker Talon mag, and the angle on that Talon mag is much more significant than the curved 18-round Talon mag. It also comes with an included foregrip, a full length of metal Picatinny rail, a fixed stock in the rear attached to this standard buffer tube, front and rear fiber optic iron sights in a 2-to-1 configuration. Also, has anyone noticed that pretty much every reviewer is putting the front iron sight on backwards? What? Like, I don't think they're intentionally putting it on backwards. I think they just haven't noticed. But I know that I'm putting it on the correct way because it's pictured that way on the box. Not like it really matters, just a detail that I've noticed. The grip also has a metal end cap, which has a sling attachment point right here. A very nice rubber textured grip sleeve. This is the same one as the Worker Harrier and the Worker Nightingale. It also has this metal trigger guard. I've actually covered this with E-tape for a reason I'll talk about in a second. We've got our mag release here. This is a half-length exclusive blaster. There is a very slight flare to the mag well. It's cut at this very interesting angle. Then we have our safety switch right here. We also have a metal trigger right here. We also have a slot up front for metal Picatinny rails that you can attach to the blaster with included hardware, which is cool that they included it, but just not something that I would use. And it does come with two of them, so you can attach it on both sides.
To the scopes, I've also attached here another aim point scope because, I'm a fan of aim points, and just in case, all the other scopes fail, I've got this one out here for that extra close range. I can come right up here, choke up on the weapon.
It also comes with the standard Worker injection molded rifling attachment, or SCAR, and 10 of these Worker high-end darts.
Nice.
It does also come with two stickers that you can put right here, one on either side that say Worker, but as you can see, I left mine off. Plus, it also comes with this baggie of extra O-rings and screws for the blaster. In addition to that, it also comes with two springs, a 250mm one and a 280mm one. Plus, it comes with two different barrel options. The smaller one is a new barrel that specifically for this blaster, and they do also feature and accept all of the same barrels as the Harrier using the same thread. And all of this retails for $125. Now, the blaster does come in 5 different colors, depending on where you get it from. Any retailer you get this blaster from should have this available in tan, white, green, and purple. All in kind of like a pastel palette. But if you want this orange one right here, you're gonna have to go to Out of Darts because it's an exclusive to them. And as you can see, that's where I got mine. This blaster was not sent to me for review, and in fact, I actually overpaid for this blaster, above retail. For a charity event, I think I paid like $225 for it. But all the proceeds went to the Toys for Tots charity back in November of 2023. In terms of first impressions of the blaster, I really like this blaster's form factor. In fact, one of my biggest complaints about the Worker Harrier was that it was too long. And this is, in essence, a shrunk down version of that. So already, we're off to a good start. Ergonomically, it does feel very good in the hands. I don't particularly like this foregrip and how small it is. It's not necessarily that the angle is the problem, It's just that this is all around too small. If you compare it to the standard Worker one that comes with a Harrier and that I currently have on my Val M, you can see that it has a full extra finger worth of distance
What do you mean by that?
for you to hold on to. And the printed one from the SBL2 is also just 1 finger length longer, but features the same angled cut. If this was this size, I'd actually like it and probably leave it on the blaster. Because it's just not quite comfortable and is immediately getting switched out. I do think it'd be usable on a flywheeler or AEB where you use it as like a hand stop, but on this blaster or any blaster where you're manually priming it against any significant spring weight, I would just get something else. As for the scar that's included with it, I really like that they included a scar at all, but this one particularly because it's cheap and effective. I know a lot of people don't like this stock, but I actually am personally a huge fan of it. It's kind of my hot take, I guess. You can easily detach this by using the Allen key that's slotted in right here. And if you do take that off, you'll reveal a second location for you to put this Allen key in. Exactly the same as it was on the Worker Harrier, because it wouldn't work on the underneath location if you were putting on a buffer tube stock. It would slide right on it. And that's something I really like that Worker does, is not only do they give us the tool to work on the blaster, but they also give us a location to hide it on the blaster.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Just like on the Worker Swift, just like on the Harrier. It also has a full length of metal Picatinny rail, which bring the two halves of the blaster together. In addition to the rail, there are also 2 screws right here, which keep the two halves of the blaster together. Now, as we mentioned before, this is a shrunk down version of the Harrier, but is the FPS shrunk down proportionally with it? Well, there's only one way to find out. So let's do some chrono testing. Now, one thing to mention is that the springs that come with this blaster are the same size as the ones that come with the Harrier, which means it should take all the same springs as the Harrier. And there are 2 more springs that come directly from Worker that we can purchase. A 1.6 by 250 millimeters and a 1.6 by 300 millimeters. In addition to that, there are also several lengths of Harrier compatible barrels that come directly from Worker that we're going to test. Even though the Seagull comes with 2 barrels, we're actually going to be testing 3 with this blaster. We're going to test the smallest one that comes with the Seagull, the largest one that comes with the Seagull, which is the same as the smallest one that comes with the Harrier, and then the largest one that comes with the Harrier. There are additional barrels that you can buy that are even larger than that directly from Worker. We just aren't going to be testing them. But without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start seeing some of the problems that I mentioned in the intro. So let's hop over to the chronograph. With spring 1, barrel 1, we've got a high of 172 FPS, a low of 162 FPS, an average right around 167, and a spread of 10 FPS. With spring 1, barrel 2, we got a high of 159 FPS, a low of 105 FPS, which was actually an outlier, giving it a spread of 54 FPS and an average about 130. With the same spring on barrel 3, we had a high of 151 FPS and a low of 111 FPS, a spread of 40 FPS, and an average right around 135 FPS. Moving to spring 2, on the shortest barrel, we got a high of 174 FPS, a low of 169 FPS, an FPS spread of only 5, with an average sitting around 172 FPS. With spring 2, barrel 2, we got a high of 167 FPS, a low of 162 FPS, with an even tighter spread of only 3 FPS, and an average of 164 FPS. Spring 2, barrel 3, we got a high of 182 FPS, a low of 161 FPS, with an average of about 171 FPS, and a spread of 20 FPS. Now, up to this point in the testing, everything that I tested and showed on screen lines up with all of my off-camera testing from when I first got the blaster. That being said, after this point, I start losing an air seal, and all of this data afterwards is corrupt due to the loss of that air seal. I'm going to show it to you anyways and talk about some of the numbers that I should have been getting instead of what I was getting. And also I'm going to explain why it's happening. Now with spring 3, barrel 1, when the blaster was functioning correctly, I was getting about 220 FPS on this. The O-ring is just barely starting to go bad at this point, so we're looking about a 10 to 15 FPS loss. When I bump up to barrel 2 on spring 3, the loss is much more significant. I was getting about 230 FPS, and now I'm starting to get shots all over the place. Now on spring 3 with the biggest barrel, I did manage to get a shot at 236, But this combo actually netted me 253 FPS with a bearing scar when I originally tested it. And then when you look at the spring 4 data on all 3 barrels, I'm seeing a significant difference. Now when I tested this spring originally, I was actually seeing a minor decrease in power around 240 FPS originally. So as you can see, I'm getting a ton of loss here. The issue is mag compatibility, specifically Coda and Tachi mag compatibility. In this particular blaster, this is a sneaky FPS killer because it does in fact fit and feed out of the blaster. And I bought a whole separate Vanguard pusher to show you what's actually happening. So once the mag is inserted, it's sitting a little low on the blaster, which causes the O-ring to scrape right here and right here, right against at the top of the feed lips, which causes it to get wear down every time you chamber a dart. And on the old O-rings, you can actually see where those feed lips have cut into the O-ring, causing it to lose all of its air. And some of the members of my local club have also experienced this to the point where it completely shreds the O-ring. Now, this problem did not plague the Harrier whatsoever. And although many of the parts internally are the same from the Seagull to the Harrier, one of the major differences is the mag release, which is actually the reason why we're having this problem. We're going to go over some of the solutions towards the end of the video, but right now I think is a good time to talk about mag compatibility. Now, of course, it is compatible with its own magazine, the straight Talon magazine, the 18-round curved Talon, and the 10-round Talon. Although the 10 round is a little tighter fit because of the raised lettering on the side. It is not, however, compatible with the Worker Harrier magazine. The magwell never gives it a chance to engage because of the angle. It's also not compatible with the X-Shot Longshot magazines. The geometry isn't right for it. It also doesn't work with the Dart Zone Pro magazines or the Dart Zone Max magazines, which is because those 3 magazines are based on the Katana compatibility. Now, I've never been able to test this before because I didn't have a Katana magazine, so shout out to the anonymous subscriber who sent this one to me so I can test them from now on. But it doesn't fit. Like I mentioned, the Coda magazine does fit and it feeds, but unless you've done the proper modifications, I wouldn't use it with this because it's going to tear up your O-ring. And pretty much the exact same applies to the Tamagotchi mag. Fits and feeds, but it'll rip your O-ring to shreds. It does, however, work with the Nerf Strife X magazines, Tryon magazine, and XYL Unicorn mag. Now that we've seen how hard it shoots and what mags it works with, let's talk about how accurately it shoots. And accurately it does. When we back things up to 40 feet on this considerably smaller target, even on the weakest spring on the shortest barrel, which gives us about 160 FPS with the scar on, we're able to hit 4 out of the 5 shots, with the 1 miss being within an inch from hitting the target. In my opinion, this is a very accurate blaster. Now that we've done all this testing, and I've been using this blaster extensively over the past 6 months, I'm going to tell you some of my opinions on it, both good and bad. First, let's start out with the good. I really like the inclusion of all the metal accessories, the metal rail, which helps with rigidity, plus all metal internals, brass inserts, a sturdy injection molded shell, the inclusion of a scar. This is a hobby-grade product at a very good value, in my opinion. Like, yeah, it's not as cheap as the Tryon or the Nexus Pro X, but this blaster feels infinitely better and has quality of life elements like those brass inserts that really make it worth the value. I really like this stock, and I know a lot of you guys don't like it because you plan on shouldering the blaster low, but I use my iron sights. So when I shoulder the blaster, it looks more like this. I'm able to look directly down the iron sights because of how low profile the buffer tube is. No stock extending or raising that piece for me. And that's why I like this. It actually allows the rear of the buffer tube to go behind me, making it an even tighter profile. That being said, it's easy to pull it off. And another stock that gives that same benefit that you could try is this Worker CQB one. Still keeps the nice small form factor, and my cheek can still sit directly on the buffer tube, which makes it the lowest that I can. It also has a really low height over bore compared to something like the Nexus Pro X, which means where you're looking is much more in line with where you're shooting, which is something I'm a huge fan of. And speaking of aiming, these iron sights have to be probably some of the best Nerf dedicated iron sights on the market, and you can buy them separately. I think they're like $10 or $12 on Out of Dart's website. And I definitely have bought several of these. That way I can have them on pretty much any blaster that I want, like my SBL2. Don't worry, we'll be reviewing this one shortly. And also a side note, this blaster has a really short draw, so in CQB situations, it's so just quick to just, which is nice. Now let's talk about the things that I don't like about this blaster. One thing I don't really like about this blaster is how sharp the edges are on this trigger guard right here. And as you can see, I've actually run E-tape around them. Like, I like that it's metal because it's very solid when I'm raising my blaster up. And I do use this point to raise my blaster up, especially in competitive situations where I'm coming off the starting line quickly. I just wish this was a little more rounded, would make it a little more comfortable. And it's kind of a minor nitpick though. I'm also not a huge fan of the mag that it comes with. The extra curve in this mag, as opposed to the 18 rounders, makes it so it doesn't go in and out of the Talon mag holders that are made by Worker, which I do use those from time to time. This blaster also has a very real steel look, and having black mags isn't probably the best idea depending on where you live. But even then, I didn't see them coming in any translucent colors, which is another thing that I don't like about mags, because I'd like to be able to quickly check how many I have in the mag under pressure. Also not a fan of this like little Worker foregrip, but like I said, this could easily be changed out for something else. And of course the big one, the Coda/Taki mags compatibility issue. In terms of solving that issue, there is a 3D printed file set that is in the works. The other thing is that over the Harrier, this has a slightly smaller plunger tube. And because of the shorter length of draw plus that plunger tube, we're not able to get quite as much power of this out of the Harrier. And it would be absolutely insane, but really cool if something of this size were able to get that kind of power, like 275 to 300 FPS on a standard 1-gram dart. But I have a solution for that in an upcoming video, so stay tuned for that project. And if you saw me at Maryland Mayhem, then you got a first look at what that project is. All in all, I do give this blaster a stamp of approval. I think this is a good blaster at a good value. I do think as long as you're aware of the Coda issue in advance, or you're prepared to either A, get a lot of extra O-rings, B, not use Codas, or C, use that beta solution, which includes the 3D printed mag release and trimming the dart gate, then you should be fine. And I've had a ton of fun using this blaster. Like, I would be using this blaster, go to move on to a different blaster, and then kind of just want to pick this blaster back up again. Its form factor is just so good. And I know a lot of people want to compare this to the Unicorn. This blaster, yes, is a little bit bigger, but I think the Unicorn in some cases might be too small.
That's what she said.
For some people. And also, this covers a little more power range with less modding than that blaster does. Just something to consider. But I do personally own both. Side note, you guys have been asking both in the comments of YouTube and in my DMs on Instagram for me to share a little bit more of my personal life here on YouTube and give you a little inside look. So I think I'm going to start doing AMAs on my Instagram stories, so make sure you follow me on Instagram if you want a chance to ask me the questions that you really want me to answer. And I'll start answering them here on YouTube. If you want to see my review on the Harrier, you should check that over here, as well as a video that I have about modifying that. As for my Seagull-sized Harrier, if you want to check out a full build guide for this blaster, then make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, so that way you're the first to know when this video drops. And it is dropping soon. But as for the Seagull, that's pretty much all I have for you today. If you like this video, then mag dump that like button. And I'll see you in a future video. Until next time on the King of Games.
Leg hit. Go spawn.
Oh shit.
Very careful. Very careful right here.
Move up and left, move and left. Oh wait, no, it's not. Oh! Let's go, up top.
Yeah. Well played, well played.
Up top.